Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's been
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. We are here with a new movie. We are not revisiting anything. We are here with the latest MCU movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3.
And original flavor, Spoiled Rotten podcast. Just
Right.
Daniel
Just
and Ben today.
the two of us
No,
for
no guest
Cool
stars
guests.
or guests. No cool ones today. It just felt like a little OG flavor would be good.
Yeah, just let us vibe out on this together.
Shake and bake.
There we go. Unfortunately, those two are not friends anymore in real life. So
I know.
That's sad. So yeah, I think I don't know if we usually do this, but I mean, it's very simple, but just letting people know what happened. What's the general idea of the movie before we jump around and
Quick
talk about
rundown,
it?
baby. Yeah.
Basically, the Guardians need to save Rocket's life. There was quite the ticking clock here.
Mhm.
They have 48 hours to save Rocket's life.
Yep.
And they cannot medically operate on him until they get a certain passcode that bypasses whatever kill switch is in him that
Mhm.
turns on whenever he is being operated on.
Yep.
Which does bring up questions from other movies, or just like, is this the first time he's ever been injured? But I guess that doesn't really matter.
I think to
because-
that degree where he's needed
Yeah.
a med pack in his core, maybe his arm, it wouldn't
Yeah.
activate.
I guess
but
to me, the best way to say this is emotionally, this movie made sense to me.
oh yeah,
I
it
think-
hit good.
I think there's a lot of things I was just like, well, why is this? But at no point did it stop me from tearing up or just enjoying
Right.
my time with the movie.
Okay.
I think that is how I would put it. That this is a movie that is, it emotionally hit me the right way, the way I'm assuming it's supposed to hit me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I can champion it on. I can see if people had other. I don't see anybody with issues. I haven't really read or watched anything about this.
Oh, I've seen
But-
some issues
Yeah,
that
okay.
people have had,
I'm sure
but I
you'll
mean,
bring them up, but
they're
I think,
minor. Yeah.
I think most people are saying this is a great movie, and I'm
Yep.
assuming they feel the same way I do, which is, yeah, it hit that spot emotionally.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say this is a course correction to get back on track for the MCU and all that kind of stuff. You can say what you want.
Yeah.
I just feel like this is what happens when you have a director that's deeply, deeply in love with a franchise that they've been.
Yeah, like Ryan
they-
Coogler.
Exactly. Like this is what happens when you have people committed to what they do. So, those early Marvel studio formulas where we'll insert people here to do this job is you see the difference in quality here.
I think, yeah. I mean,
No shade to
be fair-
them, but
to be
you know,
fair, I know we probably. Oh no, Quantumania will come up on the episode after this. With,
Oh, yeah.
with Rachel, but
yeah.
I still like that movie. I'm pretty like firm in being like, no, I like what that movie talked about.
The bones
Um,
of what it was good.
And I think that's also I saw the thing. It's one of the only. I think it's one of only 3 MCU trilogies where it's the same director through all of them.
Yep.
So it's Spider-Man with John Watts.
Yep. Fantastic.
Guardians of the Galaxy with
Mhm.
James Gunn and whatever we just said. Ant-Man. So I think. I mean, whether or not they like Peyton Reed, he definitely cares about it. It feels like the fact that he's been there for all 3.
Yes. And one thing I will say about the Ant-Man franchise is I dare anyone to say, compare it to the Thor franchise and be like, is this as consistent? There's a lot more highs and
think
lows
of the-
in Thor, but
Yes.
to me, Ant-Man is much more consistent, and that's what I want from a franchise delivery of that kind of energy. You know what I mean? I'm like,
and I think
good.
Guardians similarly is consistent. And
Absolutely.
I kind of, I was looking at my letterboxed list, and I was like, yeah, I feel like I just have to group the 3 of them together. I do think Homecoming breaks up some of them, but like,
Yes.
they really are like this special one-off thing within the MCU, which I like. I
Mm-hmm.
like that they're their own thing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they
Very
have
much
like a
so.
quality of their own and a consistency of their own.
Yeah. It feels self-contained, but it truly does feel comic booky in the sense where like, yeah, you can literally pull Gamora out of a storyline that she's in and
Hmm.
inject her into this, and it actually feels natural,
Oh
and
yeah,
it
like
works
why
really,
wouldn't her
really well.
sister talk to her? Like,
Exactly. It's
yeah.
like, okay, well, why would just the fact that Peter and Peter's inability to get over and deal with his emotions towards this situation going to impair or should impair anyone else's ability to connect with
Hmm.
Gamora if they should choose so, right? And this is a
Yeah,
business transaction. They were like, "Hey, I hired my sister to come along and the
yeah.
Ravagers for backup." I'm like, "Awesome. Great way to have her on board."
And I like, speaking of the comic book stuff, that it is like, wait, is his name High Evolutionary? What is this character's name?
Yeah, the High Evolutionary.
I like that his thing is like, oh, I'm gonna go hire, like, I'm gonna hire Adam Warlock to go do this for me, like,
Mm-hmm.
because he's like, I already know they hate the Guardians, so it's not gonna
Mm-hmm.
be that hard of a sell to be like, hey, can you help me fuck them up? And because yeah, the way the movie starts is just like, for whatever reason, I really liked every time Rocket was singing along to a song. I don't know
Oh my
why, but I was
God,
just like,
yeah.
yeah, great, keep doing this. But it kind of just starts with him sadly singing
Creep.
"Creep,"
Yeah.
and everyone, like, not everyone's sad. Him and Peter are definitely sad or
Oh yeah.
sullen, and yeah, then Adam Warlock just comes and blasts Rocket out of the fucking room,
Mm-hmm.
and we're kind of off to the races from that point. And one thing I did read before seeing this movie is that you do have this sick feeling in the pit of your stomach the whole time. It's like, oh, this is where they're gonna kill this character. Oh, this is, and I really did feel like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's certain things where I'm like, well, they have to have this part from the trailer. Like, it wouldn't make sense if they didn't have this section
Mm-hmm.
that I saw from the trailer. But like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of times where I'm like, man, they could kill this character off right now because it's the last movie. Like,
Yeah.
and again, it didn't play into me. None of the main characters die, and that wasn't a problem for me because I thought that it was like, it was just saying like, yeah, like their time together like this is over. That doesn't,
Yeah.
like, death isn't the only way something can end for people. Like,
So I'm glad you brought that up because that is genuinely one of my biggest surprises of this movie. And I've reckoned with it for quite some time, processing what the ending was and all that kind of stuff and all the fake out for the deaths, right? Because there's
yeah,
genuinely points in time where you're like,
yes, there
I
are some
feel
fake
like
outs
this
for
is
sure.
going to lead to a death. Eventually, it not directly in this scene, but maybe off camera, like to a like pull aside in the middle of battle kind of thing, where they're like fading away, and
Hmm.
it inspires like a team rally or something like that. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like that's what I thought would happen, and pull the Guardians back together, and then still have to reckon with the idea of forming a new lineup. But I genuinely didn't think that everyone was going to make out of this.
I think, yeah.
Um,
What I
and it
liked about
showed.
it is,
Mhm.
sorry, it reminded me of Civil War, where it's like that movie broke the Avengers. Like, no Avenger died, but the Avengers died. Like, yes, there's a new Guardians team, but it's like
Yeah, it's
the
what Zemo said.
like, but it's like, but what effect will that have? Because that definitely doesn't seem like a stronger team, or like
Right,
they get along a bit better, but I don't know,
right.
like it just means like just all that knock on effect of like what happens when you break up that high functioning team.
Hmm. It's and I like what it's and I like that you referenced Civil War. It's the idea of um empires that fall from outside have all will always
Yeah,
be able to rebuild. Empires that fall from within can never rebuild, and all this kind of stuff. And this is to that point. It's not fallen. It's rebuilt into a different lineup, and it's a lineup that I believe in and I like. And I'm like, this is going to be fun watching these go.
yeah,
These people going
those
around,
guys
right?
are fun, but I
Yeah.
think like something like, I don't know if we'll get to maybe one thing that did not rub me the wrong way, but I was like, interesting that they went there and then kind of
Mm-hmm.
backed off of it, was um throughout the movie, like, there's tensions are high, right? Like, so as we said, like,
Mm-hmm.
Peter and Rocket are pretty upset at the beginning of the movie, and they have this stupid fight over the Zune.
Mm-hmm.
um and like, so like that the movie, like, that's showing you that in the first scene, and then you realize like there's going to be a bunch of fights about something else, but not really. You know, like there's going to be a lot of fights that have subtext and verbal fights that have subtext with them, and the one and Nebula they really put as like, oh, she's always going to do it. She's always going to say something mean to try and get the best out of people, and Mantis not calls her up, but just says like, I get it.
Oh
you feel so insufficient that you like to look for the inefficiencies in other people. That makes you feel like it's equal. You can do that to me, but you can't do that to Drax. And she said, and I liked that she was like, you have no right to push him. But then I was like, wait, are they gonna go and like, you don't have any right because he's mentally disabled? And they didn't say it. Like, I felt like they crept up on it. They just landed on because he's stupid, which brought another issue for me. But I was just like, okay, like you genuinely, and he says, you genuinely think I'm stupid? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, does she? Like, I don't, but that doesn't feel like she, I mean, to be fair, she can grow to think he's stupid. That's fine. But it just feels like something that would need to be explored a bit more, that she came to think he was stupid. Because then she just tells him, just forget it. Like, and not just tells him, she uses her powers to make him forget. Because clearly that's something she doesn't think is just a thing that should be out there. Otherwise, she'd be like, yeah. And then to me, I don't want to rewrite scenes, but like, to me, if you're going to do that and have her be like, yeah, I think you're stupid. And he'll be like, no, you're stupid. I'm not stupid. Like, for him to push back or like feel good enough about himself, because she says he's the only one that doesn't hate himself. So like,
I love that she said that.
Prove that so that when she says, yeah, I think you're stupid, he can be like, no, I'm not. Like, he doesn't have to articulately say why he doesn't think he's stupid, but the fact that he went, wait, you think I'm stupid? And then that's a problem for him, which perfect. Like, I get why that would be a problem, because it was a problem for me too, where I was like, wait, she thinks he's stupid. The fact that they just went, no, forget about it, moving on. I was like, no, we can't move on from this. This is a thing that she thinks he's stupid, only because what they were trying to set up kind of fell short for me there. He like, either he's, I don't know what I'm trying to say, other than it would have been nice to have him not have that wiped away. It would have been nice for him to at least be like,
oh, for her not to do
like,
the brain wipe. Yeah.
Like, I don't even want him to really have a conversation. I just think he'd be like, well, I'm not stupid. The same way he's like, no, I'm invisible. Like, when he said like is it Infinity War, when he's like, I'm invisible, and like,
I'm so slow.
We can prove you're not, and he's like, I'm invisible. Like, it should have been like that. That like, it didn't bother him that they said that, because now I feel like, well, that puts him at a disadvantage. Like, he's had that taken away from him, like that knowledge of someone he should be the closest to, the way they've written these movies.
I didn't think of it like that at all. I was like just like
Superman erasing Lois's memory at the end of Superman 2. It's like,
I mean,
that's a big deal.
It's a big deal. We're talking about gaslighting and manipulation. That is gaslighting and manipulation, right? It's what Peter does to all the world. But like, hey, just forget that I'm Peter Parker. I'm gonna do that, and then I'm not gonna follow through with my promise. Like that, whatever. Like that shit that I don't like. And you're right. I don't like that at all. Whether or not he had to reckon with it, I'm just like,
no. I'm not saying they have room for, or that I need him to, because I think the whole point is it doesn't matter. Their opinions of him don't matter because he's so confident in himself. So it's not like I needed him to fight and then win them over. It's more just that it bothered him, and then we get that whole thing taken away right away, instead of having it. If you were going to take it away anyway, why not just have him be like, no, I'm not.
So,
and then later on, when they show when Nebula says, I saw you for the first time today, you're not a destroyer, you're a dad, that all makes sense, and you don't have that awkward thing where they took something away from him and erased a memory.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is like practically that had to happen, in the sense where every time something's been brought up against Drax, where it's like, he gets defensive like a child immediately, and then he's like, here's an example of how I'm not. So it would definitely like slow that whole scene down, in the sense where I'm like, oh, you're going to give us examples of how you're not stupid right now, versus this is like some of the best Mantis stuff I've seen in such a long time, because she's one of the only self-aware characters in this whole damn movie. And it's so good in the sense where she's like,
self-aware.
Yeah, she's like, I know no one listens to me, so I'm going to get Drax to say this to Peter. And the fact that she's like, even though Peter knows that it's not Drax saying it, she knows that it's more impactful getting Drax to say it, like to have Peter hear it through Drax because of whatever kind of boundaries or barriers he has to kind of hearing things from her. It's everything she says about it. I'm like, you're so self-aware that I love where they get to for her at the end of the movie. And to your point where you said, you don't have to have a death to have things break apart. This was the first time I reckoned with it. I'm like, this is the best version of a healthy processing of everything and a goodbye where everything is gratified. And that's why I feel so confident with the team. I don't feel like anything's lingering. The whole Peter and Gamora thing, I'm like, good, glad they put that to bed. Like all this kind of stuff. I'm like, this is good. The people that want to stay on stayed on and got upgraded roles. Awesome. And like everything about it, this was such a great movie, and that does put a whole thing, the gaslighting and manipulation part from
as
Mantis.
you said, I didn't want to see him I mean, honestly, if he gave an example of why he's not done, I don't think it would have slowed it down that much. Like, I think by that point we were already used to him giving examples, as you said, so it would have felt like that while still maintaining that he is so self-confident that and maybe they're trying to show how he's not necessarily self-aware, but we already knew that from the first movie. Like, that wouldn't be new. Like, that's his whole thing, is that, like, he's confident, but while not necessarily being socially aware of what's going on with everybody. And like, and I think just having him be like, I'm not stupid. Like, and if it's a funny example or a serious example, it's still just him not having that taken away from him. I think that you took away a bit of his agency, or at least ability to process something huge for his daughter figure.
You're absolutely correct, because later on it does, and I'm thinking about the opportunity of how he could have done it or something like that, even if like they didn't erase his memory and all that kind of stuff. You think I'm stupid? And he's just like if he just like sat there thinking about it and stews on it, and then later on where he's like you said, instead of defending but actually being like, here's evidence of how I'm not stupid, of like, in the sense where Nebula has the language processor, knows like, I don't know how many languages she says, like, let's say 6,000. I'm going to say something obscure, 6,000. But Drax is the one that can speak to the kids and say like, and she's like, why didn't you say that? And it's like, you didn't ask.
He actually said, why didn't you ask?
Why didn't you ask, or something like that, which is great.
Feels like he's challenging.
100%.
Makes sense. Again, emotionally, that would be something he cares. But you already did the thing where she told him to forget, and I get it. Maybe he only forgot what Mantis said, but it's still like that forget thing, and I feel like that if I was gonna give a knock, that would be one that like it really bumped for me, because I was just like, I get it. We watched the Christmas episode where we see Mantis will do that without a care, like, and she doesn't really have to deal with moral consequences of what she's doing, or the morality of what she's doing. I get that, but it's just like, show me that she wouldn't do that to her father figure. Like, I mean, I don't know if she sees him as a father, but clearly he sees her as a daughter figure, and that's part of their growth apart, when she says, let me do this on my own, I don't need protecting, I'm the one that got the obelisk to listen to me and follow me. As we keep hinting at, it makes sense that they break apart the team, because everyone has had this adventure together and now knows what they need to work on for themselves, and that's what they're going to work on. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
But like, it just the forget it thing, I'm just like, it just feels like you're hand waving on screen, like it just like, you didn't need to do that. Like, you could have just let him stew, as you said, let him stew on that. And then he proves he's not stupid, or at least he proves that he's smart in a way that he needs to be for the team dynamic.
It makes me reconsider how I feel about the Jedi mind tricks and all that kind of stuff. I mean, literally they're called mind tricks and all that kind of stuff, but it is manipulation based on one's will and all that kind of stuff, which is why I like the fact that the Jedi are like, this is wrong, we have a moral code, and then the Sith are like, No, we don't.
No,
No, we do what we want for ourselves, and then screw you if you get in the way, we'll chop you down. So no, you're absolutely right about the Mantis bit. Because like I was saying, with in that situation where she was like, where Drax was like, you didn't ask. I would have loved for that line to be like, who's stupid now, or something like that. That would have been a great.
That is making him petty, but I'm sure.
No,
I see
he
what
is
you mean.
petty though. He's so petty. Look at that first scene of like, hey,
second best friend.
Yeah, second best friend. Like throughout the whole thing. Yeah, it's so good. He's so petty. It would have been great.
Like,
it would have been a great moment.
Nuts? And then Mantis like, what if I wanted one? No, there's none left.
It's like there's none left, and he's still going at it. I'm like, these. That's why I'm like that. You're right about that. That is one thing, a blip on more of Mantis's character than anything else. But like one thing to point out is the idea that someone's been in that. Okay, this is my psych brain talking. For her to be an empath solely in an abusive situation with Ego and then serving the Guardians, like she points out, she doesn't know her own needs, wants, and everything like that. Therefore, her moral system very much is developed to the degree of right and wrong of how like Adam Warlock's would be. So I like the fact that you're like that daughter figure, because Drax doesn't actively try to teach her anything of like morals or anything like that.
Be there for her.
He just wants he wants basically what Peter wants in his relationships, of that comfort that comes with that companionship, or like that filling that role movie, in his life, right?
I keep saying it's nice to have friends. If and to be honest, I don't know what the sentence for this movie is. Like I know that's repeated a lot, but it doesn't feel like that captures fully everything.
No, it doesn't.
But it's part of it. Like that's definitely something they're looking at, that like everyone is benefiting from having friends. And I like that they kind of went to like Gamora going back to the Ravengers. I know we're all over the place on this. We'll do somewhat more of a linear thing later, but like I do like that Gamora goes back to the Ravengers, and I genuinely believe they were happy to see her back, and like
100%.
I think she can see them as friends now, instead of just like, no, these are the people I work with, we pull missions together. It's like, no, look at how happy they were to have you back, and like just the embrace she gets, and it's like, yeah, that's nice to see. And like Lau said, it's nice to have friends, like, and I think she is making room for that, because 100%. Obviously earlier in the movie she's like, no, life made me angry, and it's just like, I liked that he's not saying it out loud, but my hope is that yes, he wants I almost called him Chris Pratt, Peter Quill wants Gamora back, but I think ultimately he shifts to like, if I can just get her to see the like point of having friends, that would be a win as well, because I feel like that's where they leave it. Like it feels like it's hard, because she goes like, well, I feel like we would have been fun together or whatever, like we must have been fun together, but I really do feel like it's her experience and the fact that he pushed her to be with them and stop looking at it like a mission and just like, we're friends, we're taking care of each other, that she's open to taking that on from the Ravengers, because obviously the movie isn't going like, well, you could never be friends with Ravengers, because Kraglin, Peter, like they all feel a familial thing for Ravengers, and he says, I'm a Ravenger, you're not a Ravenger, like, but I think through her time spent with them, it is the idea that she's learning that the friendship aspect is important,
right? So I think there's a degree of like, I feel what Gamora gives him in that situation and what he wants the entire time. And I love that you said want, because Star-Lord ultimately gets what he needs in this, which is a reconnection with family. And what he wants has always been Gamora, and like what Mantis says, like that lily pad thing, right? Jumping from relationship to relationship, finding comfort there as opposed to finding a home and learning to swim in that lily pad. I love the fact that Gamora, it seems like at the end of it, he just wanted her to acknowledge. Yeah, but I just feel like he wanted her to acknowledge that they were a thing and that it was real, and because that's messing with him too much, because he clearly is running from everything, right? So it's just like the idea of
doesn't really make sense to me, but yeah,
really,
again, emotionally, I'll give it to them. But
I'm processing this
people
with the
keep talking
man-child
as if
idea.
she is the Gamora that they went through all that. She isn't
Oh,
the Gamora
absolutely
that went
not.
through.
She's not.
So it's like unfair to put that on her, and I felt
100%.
like more than Peter put that on her, and I was like, why are more people than Peter doing that? Peter can be like, well, I'm just dedicated to like. Because he's trying to make it seem like you don't remember, but it's like there's nothing for her to remember. She can't.
There is nothing for her
that
to
never
remember.
happened to her. It's
Yeah.
not like she got amnesia. It's not fucking Fast and Furious where Letty got amnesia. There's nothing
Yeah.
for her to remember, and I didn't really understand why they kept writing it as if it seemed like Nebula understood. That's not her.
100%.
She's my sister. We have history that I can play off of,
Mhm.
but literally none of you other motherfuckers have history with her. So why are you like the way that Drax saying she's dead to us? I'm like, no, like the Gamora you knew is dead. Like that,
Yes.
that woman is dead.
Yeah.
You have a new Gamora from a different timeline, and you're unfairly putting this shit on her. And
Right.
that didn't really work for me. Like the whole like, yeah, if the win is that she acknowledged that, I'm like, I think it was more. I can only, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying
Right.
the only thing I can get
Mhm.
on board with is that he helps her open up so that she can be friends with the Ravengers that she's clearly going to keep going on with. And, like,
Sure.
accept that friendship, because what she gives to him is just like, I don't know, man. Sure, great. Like, you wore me down. Sure, we were a good time. But it's no, you weren't. You two were never in a relationship, and it's not really fair that he keeps putting that on you as if it's something you need to remember. It is something that maybe he would like for you guys to try and have a relationship. And even then, and obviously James Gunn knew enough to not put them together at the end.
Thank
Like,
God.
he still would be trying to mold her into the Gamora that he spent all that time.
He would 100% groom her into that. And
So
that
that's not like that's not the thing. So I've just like, it was just to me it was just weird that everyone else was acting as if this was something she just needed to remember.
The other characters within the movie.
Yeah. Other than Nebula. I don't think Nebula ever pushed her, but it did feel like the other characters had this kind of like, well, yeah, she just needs to remember. Or like,
Well, we know
sorry, Phil,
Drax
she'll
didn't,
never
though.
remember.
Right. I think at that point, it's just, so here's the thing I bring up. And this is why, like, Quill obviously cannot, he's a man-child. He's a man-child.
I saying other characters. Everything
Right.
Peter Quill does make sense to me. You
I
see
see,
the
I see.
Gamora, you understand, like,
Right.
if I could just, like, there's got to be something there.
He's too rational. So my question
as a
is,
third person, I can see like, well, she's never going to get there. Obviously, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But I understand his dedication to the idea that he could get her there.
yeah, because he's
I
just
understand
a
that,
selfish child, right? My thing is, like, I actually don't have a lot of recollection of Mantis or the other characters kind of
It's
being
just that
like,
they were
this is the
supporting
same
him in this
Gamora.
thing. It's and
Oh, that they were
and I think
supporting
that
him
Drax
how
saying,
though?
like,
supporting him in like, go get her tiger kind of deal, or like supporting
No,
him
I
being
think-
like,
I think no
you need to
one-
process this.
even if you want to put it in this term, no one is telling him she's never going to remember that because that's not her. No one is doing that. And I think that's an important thing to do if you are supporting your friend, to like help set his expectations properly.
100%.
I do
Be
think
real.
that some of them are like, oh yeah, he's just going through this thing because she doesn't remember him. Like, and maybe they don't say that explicitly, but that is what's left on the table based on them not going the other way in a more helpful way.
So to me, it makes sense, because if you look at the situation, that scene where it's played off as a joke, but of course it's very heartfelt and all that kind of stuff, where he does in the Fallout guy suits or whatever suits those Among Us suits or whatever on the planet.
It's 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah, Space Odyssey suits. When they're in those suits and they do that funny gag about the colors and the comms and all that kind of stuff, what Nebula says to me highlights to me how the group has probably approached it, in the sense where we were just hoping you'd stop. That's how I feel. Is the idea like, you're enabling it until you process it, and I'm like, that sucks, because they're not being friends to him at that point. But it sucks because he's not being a friend to himself either. He's clearly drowning in his sorrows, but he's still drunk from the holiday special, right?
But that's
Didn't
the
change
good thing about
much.
his arc, is that
Right.
what will heal him is the fact that he has run away from home. Even like, so
Yes.
he's run away from his people, and that this movie finally gets him to the point where he's like, I have to go back. Like I could see,
Yeah.
I could go see my grandfather, and I'm
Yeah.
choosing not to.
This
whole
movie
time.
is therapy for every one of these characters. 100%.
So
It's
that part I like. I
Mhm.
think I understand why you're pushing back, but to me, it's just like in a movie where people are constantly, even just to feel better about themselves, like pointing out flaws in people's logic or anything, like it is weird that no one's like, what are you doing? That's not gonna be a thing. She's not gonna do that.
I
Maybe
feel
Nebula's the one that has to do that, but
sure.
the whole we were waiting to see if you'd ever stop also doesn't really. I get that writing wise, that probably was a stand in for the whole situation, but doesn't make
Sure.
sense to me because why would you ever think he's going to stop pining over her?
I honestly, there are some times where I'm so conflicted about this because there's some times where when people are in that kind of state where they're in their own delusions and you can't get them out, telling them to snap out of it and be like, here's the reality, setting up. Although I agree with you, it's not going to actually directly hit them that way when they're not ready to hear it, right? So
Yep.
it's the idea of some people, and I'm not agreeing with this, but some people would rather go along for the more comfortable ride to not stir up shit within that friend to cause an issue or a ruckus or whatever, or conflict. And just kind of keep going until it sails its course, until it's like, yeah, you've come back down to earth. We're glad to see you again, kind of deal, right? Like, I genuinely think that's what they were doing, the whole group of it, because at that point, like you see, Nebula, like in the holiday special, Peter's the one doing the paperwork, receiving the orders and all that kind of stuff. Here, clearly, Nebula is taking on that role much more, and then everyone's doing their own thing, right? So to me, it's just like, yeah, we're enabling Peter for him to find himself back, and the events of this movie truly do that. But you're right that nobody actually has that upfront talk and healthy talk with him. But that's to assume that the rest of these characters would have that psychological development too, where clearly they don't. Like you said,
I think
the most self-aware
Mantis
character
that
is
saw that she
manipulating
should be-
people.
I think the Mantis that saw that he needed to go see his grandfather would see that she could give him the same.
But she does, though, through
No,
Drax.
But she never tells him about Gamora.
She doesn't need to, because she's
No, I'm saying she does.
But okay, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of, okay, she's
The
instead of
grandfather thing is a longer running delusion of his than the Gamora one.
well, you're 100% right about that. But it's where it all stems from. It's the idea of, like, this has always been the problem. Gamora is not the solution. The problem here is that you're running away from family, and the fact that she highlights what he needs instead of highlighting the things he needs to hear from what he wants. She's directing his actions more than the thoughts. And I do agree with. It's the idea of, like, hey, let's not be mean to him. And that's how I can see really Mantis being as an empath, right? It's like, and this is where I like what you're talking about with the Drax inconsistency of, like, no, that's legit mean. Like, that you're just brainwashing people without and other Guardians are watching you do this to Drax too. Like, Nebula goes like, did you just do that? You know what I mean? Like, there's no opposition towards it, because it's like, yeah, like, it's not going to hurt him to think that we don't think he's dumb. So there's inconsistencies there but I get it to the degree where she's like, you're my brother, yay, so I'm going to care about you slightly differently than I care about Drax. I don't know, but there's a lot of fault in these characters, but that's just a lot of the humanity that I see in them.
They're not perfect people. I'm not.
Oh, absolutely not. That would be a terrible movie to watch, a perfect person. It's just like, let's have healthy conversations with each one of their character flaws. And I'm like, no, I want to see the conflict be the therapy.
I think what I would need to see, sorry, I shouldn't frame it as need to see.
Right.
What made me feel better about what you're talking about is knowing that at any point someone brought that up to him. And, like, if he still wants to go with it, great. Sure. All of what you're saying is valid, even if they don't, if they never did. But it didn't feel to me like they were assessing that part of it. It just felt like it was just a thing that they were like, whatever. And that's fine. They're not perfect people. It just felt like that is still more conflict if they're telling him this, and that's still more interesting to watch to me, is him coming to that on his own. But, like, with just because, as I said, it's just giving that Gamora a bit more of a fair treatment. I feel like in that sense, like
Mhm.
it's played for laughs more that like she's like, what are you called, Quinn? And I'm like, but yeah, she doesn't know him. Like it's still, even in that interaction, is being played as if she does know who he is, but she's
Mhm.
like at one point she's gonna drop the act and be like, fine, I do know who you are, and yeah,
Mhm.
like, but that's not the case. So it felt like the movie wasn't fully embracing the fact that she is not a Gamora that just needs to remember her time with the Guardians.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's fair. It doesn't do that service enough, but I mean, the lens through which we see Gamora through the majority of the time is through Peter's lens more than anything else, right?
But
When
it
we see
can't
her
be
through the
that way.
Ravager,
She is a main
yeah,
character. Like she can't
I
be
get that.
through.
This
like,
is
that's
it's
what,
just a
that's my
hard
bit.
situation she's been written into in this,
Yeah.
especially for an actor that's like vocally, I do not want to come back to this franchise, right?
I mean,
It's
yeah, but
it's
that is, I guess, what I'm trying to get at as well. Is just
Mhm.
making your lead actress feel like just a day player in your movie.
yeah. But I mean, if it means it's the last one, I'm sure they were like, cool, bridge me or something like that. I don't know, whatever. Um, you got me by contract, so what can I do?
No, she was supporting wanting to do the James Gunn version of this. She signed her name to that thing when all that fallout happened.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
think
know,
she's just like Chris Evans, where she's like, yeah, okay, the story was told, we're done. Don't
100%.
don't give me any bullshit like coming
Yeah,
back and undoing what.
let me
Yeah.
rebuild my career.
Okay, we can go a bit more linear now that we've kind of gone
Yeah.
through. I think everything that bothered me. I think those are the two things that bothered me.
So here's a criticism I want your take on that I heard that I don't know where I definitely know my opinions on this. Someone said that there's too much music and it's too long drawn out in this, that it feels like there's story between music videos. That's
I
the
know
one
the
criticism I
music
heard.
video complaint about everything in general, which I can't really
Mhm.
help. I like it, so it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
It's
just
not
like,
really. Also, like I don't. I'm a big thing of like the medium is the message. Like, what do people know about the Guardians of the Galaxy? What is like front and center of most marketing is the music aspect of it. It was
mhm,
Peter's got his fucking headphones on in the poster.
mhm,
Like, it is a movie about how music influences this guy's life
mhm.
and the
And
decisions
rockets.
he makes. Yeah.
Mhm,
And that's why I like that Rocket's singing along. That
mhm,
they are brothers in that way. That they've taken to it the same way.
mhm.
So like, too much music, I don't know. Like that, it's
Yeah.
kind of what I felt when because I feel like John Wick and what was that Chris Hemsworth movie, the Extraction movie? I think it's called
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Extraction. Came out around the same time or the
Mhm,
same year at least as Harley Quinn and the Fantabulous Emancipation, whatever,
mhm,
the Birds of
mhm.
Prey
The
movie.
Birds of Prey
And
movie. Yeah.
people were like, "Well, that movie was just them fighting the whole time." I'm like, I didn't see that criticism for, and again, not John Wick 1, but like one of the John Wicks and Extraction came out around the same time, and like those movies are also just all fighting, and the Birds of Prey movie was made by the John Wick guy, so yeah, like I kind of get it. Like that's
Mhm,
that's the thing, is we're gonna show you a bunch of great fight
mhm.
choreography. So I'm not gonna go into those movies being like, seems like there's too much fighting. There was just story. I'm like, no, just give me the fighting if that's what you want to show me. Like,
Yeah.
great, I will take it. And if these movies are about me, like it's not just like, it is needle drops, but in most scenes in the movie, they're showing you where the music's coming from. It is diegetic.
Mhm,
It is a movie, like it is a franchise that actually talks to, hey, they play this music to pump each other up, like,
mhm,
or some people might feel like it's distracting, but it is a discussion. Like,
mhm,
we're playing this music because it's time to go,
mhm,
or
mhm.
it's time to relax, or like that is the point, is that you're listening to the music. And as someone who loves to play music a lot of the time, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I'm like, wait, like those people that complain. I'm like, so you're complaining about the movies, the franchise's identity. That is
Yes.
the franchise's identity. That is the only song that was in Endgame or Infinity War, because
Was it
distinctly
the only? I mean,
it,
it's how
with
they're introduced
lyrics.
with Rubber Band Man. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, with lyrics. It is the only song with lyrics in that entire movie because it is the Guardian's identity. So I'm like, when people are like, "There's too much," I'm like, you don't understand what you're criticizing right now. This is
Maybe they got tired of it. I just think that the whole
maybe.
like it is a part of the movie. It's like not really something you can dial back on. I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like people could get justifiably tired of a gimmick if it's been replicated in other movies and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, no other movie does it
Yeah,
in
like
recent
this
history as well as this. So
yeah,
to me,
it's
I'm
not
like,
oh, we
you
were
all are
watching a
just
Suicide
hating it.
Squad movie and like why is it so much like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's
Why
like,
is
no, this is his thing. Like he does
yeah,
the music. Like the music is a part of it. It's part of what the
yeah,
characters are experiencing. It is
yeah.
there for them.
It's how I feel about him. The criticism that it's like, oh, it's distracting that he puts his wife in it and all this
No,
kind of
that's
stuff.
stupid
And
as well.
I'm like, that's stupid. I'm like, have you ever seen an Adam
He
Sandler movie?
also puts
Like,
his male friends in all the movies. Like Nathan
yeah,
Fillion is in all of them, isn't he?
yeah, he's
You
in
don't see
all
his
of them.
face in all of them, but like he's in all of them.
He's
Michael Rooker
casting
came
them.
back for this one, so he's been in all of them. Like,
Yeah,
like
it's a stupid criticism. I'm like, it's not distracting. It's a
I
payoff.
don't.
It's a chapter ending thing. It makes
I just don't get
sense.
that. Like, how dare he want to
Dumb.
work with the people he loves?
How dare
Like,
he
are you a
have this?
fucking
Yeah,
idiot?
like I dare anyone to watch like Gilmore, what is it? Sandler movies in the '90s. I'm like, oh,
well,
you're
every
telling me he
Sandler
doesn't
movie basically.
exactly. It's just like, what's your problem with this? Like, what is
No,
your
I think
problem?
people
Right?
give Adam Sandler a hard time too, but it's like I don't like.
They
I don't
do,
care
but
if
for
he
different
wants,
reasons.
If he
Yeah,
wants to go to a tropical island and film a movie with his friends, and people are gonna pay him to do it, why the hell wouldn't he do that? Like,
I would
are you,
love
are you,
that.
are
Yeah,
you dumb? Like,
if someone were to
course.
say, yeah, I'm going to give you and me millions of dollars right now to do that, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I would love for you,
yeah,
Daniel, to come with me. Like,
yeah.
it makes perfect sense. It's
You
and I'm
don't
like,
have to
okay,
watch it.
I'm like, and let's be. I'm going to say one thing to those people right now: do not choose this as your hill to die on when you start to talk about nepotism, because this is bullshit for you to talk. I'm like, no, nepotism's everywhere. This is less impactful than anything else, and we all know that. Like, this is
So stupid.
it's stupid. So yeah, those are the two criticisms that I have heard that I'm like, I feel like this is dumb. I feel like it's dumb. But yeah, let's go into what we do like about this. We've talked about a lot that we do
so
like already.
yeah. So
But one of the biggest strengths for you, what was it?
one of the biggest strengths you said.
Yeah, yeah. Let's lead with that.
Mm,
I think we.
I think it's. I don't. I mean. I mean. I would say that for a movie that's ostensibly rocket centric, you don't get much of the rocket that you know and love because it's all flashbacks really until the end. So it's not really a strength. It's not something that bothered me, but it was something I was like, I knew ahead of time going into it that even though it is about him, it's about him because it's like his memories of what happened, and you're like, okay. And I was like, oh, and they do a different voice for him. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I would have liked a bit more rocket. Like, I guess they already did it in part 2. Like, I can't be upset. They gave us the like current day Rocket reckoning with who he is in part 2, which is why I love it so much.
So
But,
you
like,
didn't like that they fridged him?
well, they didn't fridge him. I mean, he's still alive.
Well, I get that. Yeah, right. But like the mod, like for all intents and purposes, they fridged that version of Rocket that you're talking about to introduce us to the softer, pre-traumatized version, while still in traumatized form.
Yeah.
Stockholm Syndrome Rocket. Which
That's sad.
I
That
say
was some
with a
sad
joke,
stuff.
but it is so sad, man. Like,
Yeah. The
oh,
way he's like,
God.
do we like music? And I'm like, stop saying we. You shouldn't like this guy. Fuck this guy.
Yeah.
and I could see it coming to like
Stockholm Syndrome, man.
By the third time he said we, and he's like, we are not going to the new planet. I'm like, I knew it, Rocket. I knew. Why did
It's
you
like,
do this?
I know it's so hurtful because I'm like, I get why too, because it's like, out of all the other creatures, he's spending so much time with him, and therefore
Yeah,
he
I
thinks
didn't
like,
that. I mean, sorry, I didn't say I didn't like that. I thought that was effective. That was good filming it. It was more just how it made me feel that I'm like, you're being singled out as like the special one. That's not going to be good.
Yeah.
Just no good can come of this at all.
Yep. I mean, you and I know what that means.
Yeah.
It's just like for him, that's what makes the heartbreak worse when he said that. It's like I'm like, oh dear, that's gonna hurt. But good on you. That sparked the thing that you needed to do to get out of that abusive relationship.
Also, the way he fucked up his face, I was like, geez. Like, I would say,
wow.
For like, it's why I'm not sure why people are always like, oh, they better not Disney-fy like Punisher or whatever. Like, this is a pretty brutal movie. Like, it's very violent and features a man having to stretch his face over a thing so that he can wear his face again like a mask because a raccoon ripped it the fuck off his face.
Right.
And like you watch as his skin peels off and you just see like the muscle under it. It's like disgusting. And yes, they got off their one F word or whatever, which I wish wasn't
the first
ruined
one.
For me. Yeah,
the
I wish
first
that
one
was for me, but like
I didn't know. That was awesome.
But like, yeah, you can do all of that and not have it be rated R. It's fine. Like, it was, unless you're saying I need to see dripping blood all the time. Like, I think that like, and I'm not saying you say that. I'm just saying like
those criticisms are weird to me.
MCU specifically can do a Punisher or a Blade, and I don't feel like it's gonna be like too sanitized. And I feel like people really like they didn't really swear in Daredevil. Like people are like, oh, but the Netflix Daredevil. I'm like, he just got punched a lot. Like it wasn't.
You don't need to swear to make something adult.
Anything rated R about that show to me either.
You don't need to swear to make it adult. Like that's a cop out. That's easily a cop out.
Yeah, I think like Deadpool doesn't feel adult to me. Like,
no, it's a child's movie that's using adult language.
I'm not saying take kids to see Deadpool, but it doesn't feel like mature or like
it's not mature.
It's just a bunch of swearing and like nonsense. Like it's not grown up.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, my point being, I thought this, as I said, the strength of it is I think that it's emotional, but even the fight scenes felt cathartic to me. The
fight scenes.
Like I felt like everything emotionally worked in that way. That like I could watch, like even the first Adam Warlock fight, which looked cool, like the camera movement and everything looked cool, but it was just like I liked watching all the different Guardians have their reaction to seeing Rocket get fucked up, and like I was like, it's only the first scene. I'm like getting amped up already. Like, yeah, they're gonna come and get, like, they're gonna save Rocket. And I was just like, it just worked in that. I think that would be the 100%. Biggest strength is that like even the action scenes for the most part drew me in emotionally, not just aesthetic. I wasn't like very well staged fight. I was just like, yeah, okay, cool. Like this is happening, and I'm happy we're getting this release.
Because the fight scenes to me, I'm like, this is the best part of them as a group. You know what I mean? It's them interacting, having that like flow state where they're just like, even in a state of battle, they can do that and all that kind of stuff. And it's the plot, the driving factor of it all works. It's great. And especially to me, like as a sudden shock to the whole thing, for all of them to have to process the reality of what it is to say goodbye to someone, because at that point I'm sure all of them in this were just like, no, we're just going to keep going, and going, right? And the idea of like now having to process, oh, what if we did lose Rocket, forced them to come to the terms of like everything does need to be evaluated from the perspective of is it time to move on?
It's good that he has friends that are able to rally together to come get him, and then they'll assess what needs to happen once they know he's safe. But like I like that. Also, not any insight, but it was interesting to hear James Gunn was saying the first F-bomb was actually going to be an Endgame. So Tony gets the gauntlet and I think says something like "fuck you" or something instead of "and I'm Iron Man." That's we'd always heard like they reshot it like very late in the game, but apparently it played really well, and Kevin was like, you can keep it, but that's going to be, that's going to be your legacy. That your legacy is going to be like, you guys put "fuck you" in Endgame. And the Russos were like, yeah, we don't want that to be our legacy. And so he told James Gunn, like, so now it's on you. This will be your legacy, that you put "fuck" in And then James was like, I turned to him, I was like, who the fuck do you think you're talking to? Of course I want that to be my legacy. He's like, yeah, we're keeping it.
Yeah, we're definitely keeping it. Obviously, this is awesome.
Open the fucking door.
I love that so much.
It's like those were very stupid instructions.
Yeah, this
Looks
is
like
not very intuitive.
What? Just press the button under the handle.
So you know what's really funny about that? Okay, this is I saw one time. I was in a car with some younger humans, and it was an older car with the window crank. And they're like, "What's this?" And I'm like, I guess it really isn't intuitive to someone that's used to just pressing buttons all the time.
Why would you want to have to do this?
Yeah, why would you put mechanics in this? Just like push a button.
Analog, like, all right, here we go.
I love what she says.
I got caught on something like that. I went to like this very old gas station, and I was like, I need the gas. And an older person had to come over and be like, very quietly. They didn't. I don't think they were trying to shame me. They just very quietly like flipped the switch, and I'm like, thank you. All right,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's situational, right? It's like people in Oregon don't know how to pump their own gas because by law, that state, that's a job.
Yeah. Well, New Jersey, you're not allowed either.
Right.
But yeah, I think what were we talking about? The fighting, they come together. We talked about the F word. So yeah, basically they come out of this fight, and Rocket is, and that's what we explained already. They try to put a med pack on him, and Nebula's like, "You fucking idiots! You can't do that. He's got a kill switch." And they just go on this mission to find the High Evolutionary and get this passcode. All the while, we're seeing flashbacks to how Rocket was created, like how he picked his name, how he had these friends, Lila, Teefs, and Sky. Sky was really Floor was really upsetting to me. I was just like, oh geez, like what did they do to
the
her
visual
mouth?
image?
Yeah, just Floor? All of it is upsetting, obviously, but like they kind of left the Lila upsetting stuff to her arms, which don't always have to be in frame, so you can sometimes forget about it. And she's so pleasant. Like, I know it's Linda Cardellini, and you're like, wow, we're really double dipping here. Good for you, Linda. Get those double checks. But like, it just like she has such a pleasant voice that you're not constantly aware of how much like maybe pain she is in or has gone through. Whereas for Floor, I'm just like, I mean, even the fact that your name is Floor because you feel like you're stuck on the floor and just you've got the metal trap on your mouth and the legs. It was like, this is so sad and upsetting.
To me, Teefs was worse. Teefs was by far.
I mean, they're all happy. I shouldn't say that. Like, all of them seem in a good mood.
Right.
Because that was the whole point. They had each other. So they weren't upset because they had each other. I get that's the point. But Teefs was upsetting to you for why?
The eyelid thing. Just like
I didn't notice that until later in the movie. I was like, oh my god, they have those eye clamps on his eyes.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And I'm like, oh my god, you can't blink ever.
No, yeah.
Holy crap. Like
sleeping, just not.
And I'm almost like, okay, well, you're a walrus in a very small cage. So how much of your body is actually gone? And you're on wheels, like, and with no arms. Like, how, like, to me, I'm like, you must have had the hardest time figuring out how any of that would work and function and be just constantly watching everything the entire time. You know, like, that to me was like, holy crap, Teefs by far hit me the worst with that. Like, but you're right with
Floor,
with Lila, her prosthetic arms being like, okay, this is, you can see why Rocket and her would have that kind of more than friendship connection based on that hug. Yeah.
Definitely more. So basically, you've learned through these flashbacks that High Evolutionary needs Rocket's brain because he was able to figure out why the experiments weren't working in the first place. Like,
some complicated protein infusion thing. I'm not going to repeat it.
And he figured it out for him, and he was like, "Well, he'll figure it out every time. So I need him. So that's why he gets Adam Warlock to steal him, because it was never about killing him. It was always, I need him. It was about killing him once he got the brain, but it was like, I need him alive so I can take the brain and figure this out,
study it. Yeah. And I like how the High Evolutionary is like, that character to me is just like, I like how devolved he gets by the end of the thing, because like it's the one singular obsession that
Yeah,
something he created is actually smarter than him. That
yeah,
is
he
his
can't
whole
have that.
downfall.
It's like
He
what the
can't
fuck,
have that. He
and
needs to
that his
understand it
own
and give
team
it
goes
to
against him
himself.
because they're
Well,
like, all right,
yeah,
this guy, no,
this guy is gonna bring us all
he's gonna ruin us
down.
all. And I
Yeah.
think that's why I couldn't be like, it can't be just it's nice to have friends, because there's clearly, I mean, I'll take it this way. Like, I feel like a very like religious thing here of like people who say that, because at one point someone says for the love of God, and he's like, there is no God, which is why I'm doing this. So he thinks he's doing
Mhm.
God's work, which
Yep.
is, I mean, if you read the Bible, like, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue that he's not trying to replicate a God's work type thing of like,
No,
I
he's not.
create, I create, so you owe me, and
Hmm.
I will punish anyone. Or it doesn't even have to be punished. It's just like I will just fucking wipe you out if it's not working for me anymore.
Yeah.
Like I will just wipe out this whole exist. And like that's the other thing in this movie. Like he does get rid of that. Like from the first trailer where
Hmm.
like Drax hits the girl with the ball or whatever, that
Yeah.
whole planet just dies.
Yeah.
Like
Complete
it's not,
genocide.
they don't save them. Like it's just like, nah. I mean, this planet's got to go. They're, and so it's just this. They try to save as many people as they can, but not even off that planet, off of his ship, because he was
Yeah.
going to do it to other
So
people.
100%. And that's what I will always highlight when people are like, oh, they Disneyfied this. I'm like, do you realize the kill count in Guardians movies? Like, just period, full stop. Do you realize the kill count? First movie, they dive bombed, like Pearl Harbored Xandar.
Hmm.
Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
This movie, literal genocide of an entire population. And we're talking about,
Well, a
okay,
planet, not even just
a
like, it's
planet, yeah.
not just like a country, or it's like not a whole
No,
planet's fucking gone now.
yeah. And then also, I mean, this hasn't been confirmed, but like the Sovereign being his entire creation and all that kind of stuff, and like we know the Elizabeth Debicki is dead, but I don't know if off screen he decided to kill off everything else, all that, like
Yeah, I
and
don't
all
know
that kind of stuff. But
where that's at, because I
but
mean, it's not even like Adam was like, oh, I can go back to my home world or whatever. He's just like, I guess I hang out with these guys now. By
well,
the
he's
end of
never
it.
really had a home outside
Well,
of the
but
fact
what I'm
that
saying is, to your point of who
yeah,
knows what happened to the Sovereign,
right,
is that like, sure, he knows his mom, but like
right,
he obviously knew other people. Like I get it, he just came out of the cocoon, but he came out of the cocoon ostensibly where the Sovereign are from.
right.
I don't think he only knows his mom in that sense. Like he
But
knows like
yeah,
he would have a concept of, I can go back to where my mom's from, but
mm,
he doesn't. He's just like, oh, I'm gonna, and like that plays into the whole, it's nice to have
mhm,
friends. He sees
mhm.
them as friends. I get that, but it just seems like, I'm just trying to go off of your point of like, yeah, like who knows what he did to the Sovereign.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that it's him finding family in that, right? Him
Yeah,
and all that kind of stuff. And I like how they did Adam Warlock in this, believe it or not, because
yeah,
the
I have
entire
no
time,
idea who this character. I mean, I do, because I've seen everyone talk about, oh, he's in Infinity War. Ooh, he does this. I'm like,
yeah, I'm like,
I
well,
don't care.
I'm like, everyone, y'all gotta do the Peter thing and accept the fact that that's not the version of Adam Warlock we're gonna get. So this is what we're getting, and he's kind of great. And I like what Will Poulter's bringing to it, and I
I
like
like
the
Will
fact that
Poulter, so I was just happy he was in it. I was like, great.
yeah,
Although
and
at first, his first couple of lines, I was like, is he American or not? He obviously ends up being British, but I'm just like,
yeah,
did he do his first like few lines in American and they forgot to like?
it
Because
felt
I feel
weird
like
to me too.
I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes, because I know John Boyega had to do that. He did Finn as
Mm.
British, and then they're like, switch it up. So he did it as American. I'm like, but did they forget the first couple of lines for Adam Warlock to go back to British? Like,
Maybe
it
some
just
bad
it
editing
felt like
up
he was
there.
doing something American in the first bit of it.
I don't know, but it was just, and maybe because it's just like maybe he's. Uh, you're right. There's a little bit of inconsistency there, but I'm just gonna chalk it up to the fact that he's 2 days old and trying to emulate
Again,
whatever he
yeah.
sees.
Again, I don't really care. Like, I'm not like, oh, this broke the movie for me. Like, we already
Yeah.
talked about. I did forget one thing, and it is related to Adam Warlock that felt weird, but again, emotionally, it didn't fall under the category of those other two things we mentioned up top,
Mhm.
because at least emotionally, I was willing to give them a pass on it.
Mhm.
But yeah, yeah, basically they just have to find this passcode, and they keep. And I like that there was this other running bit of people telling Peter like, it's a trap. You know it's a trap. He's like, it's not a trap if I know it's a trap. that's
It's
just
a
a face off.
face-off.
And they're like, no, it's a trap. And I like that ultimately he's like, yeah, you know what? I did know this was a trap. Now we're going to get you. And I was like,
Mhm.
good for you, Groot and Peter. I feel like every movie they find a way for me to just be like, yeah, I like Groot. Again, like I always think like I'm not going to like this version of Groot, but they always find a way. It's such an interesting character that I'm just
Yep.
like, yeah, you know what? Every movie he shows up in, I'm like, nice. Like
Yeah.
I thought I wanted the version from the last movie, but you made this version work. Great.
Yeah, this works even better because that first one, the first Groot that we got, where he just does the vine through the whole bunch of people in the hallway
Yeah.
scene and back and forth. This one where he does the vine through the mouth
Yeah.
and just like, I'm like, oh, this is vicious.
Because this is the kid of the
violent.
first Groot, right? That's the
Yeah,
canon
he's
that
basically like 20.
yeah, he isn't the Groot from the first movie. He's the offspring of
Yes,
that
he
Groot.
is.
Yeah.
He's a totally different Groot. Yeah. So when people are like, oh, I'm like, no, that Groot's gone. This
we
is
spent most time with this Groot.
Yes.
Yeah, because we've seen him since part 2.
Mhm.
I mean, he's at the end of part 1, obviously, with dancing to Jackson
Hey,
5.
we
Yeah.
fell in love with him then.
Yeah.
We
So, I mean,
fell
he's been in all
really
3
in love with
movies.
him.
Never mind. He's been in all 3 movies and the 2 Infinity and Endgame movies. So
Yep.
there you go.
Yeah.
He is our Groot, basically.
He is our Groot, and I am just baffled at where they're gonna take his aesthetic next and how big he's gonna get.
Oh,
Like,
I really liked when
that was
Gamora was
wild.
just like, when Gamora was like, you guys are just making up what he's saying, right?
yeah,
And then by the end of the movie, it's not because she understood, but she just, his body language, she's like, it was nice working with you too.
Yeah.
I like that she was like, I get it now. Like,
Yeah.
they actually know what he's saying, but I like that she was just like, all right, intuitively, I get what you're
Mhm.
trying to say right now.
yeah. It's I like how like there's a lot of ability
like
to
that
communicate
paid off.
without language, and
Yeah.
it's good. Yeah, yeah. It's and that whole like that final thing where you actually hear Groot say, "I love you guys." Do you feel like that's more of a whole like, hey, that's the audience being led into the family too, or is it actually the characters saying, "I love you guys"? Because I've heard both
Honestly, at
theories,
first
and I
was
kind of
this is
like,
stupid. Why did they do that? And then I was like, it's nothing is stopping him from being able to say I love you guys. Like, it's just
Right.
he speaks his language, which is I am Groot. But like, he could learn a new language, and
so this is
he's
my
been around
thing.
them. He's been around them for long enough that I could see him being like, at this time, it makes sense for me to put these sounds in this order and say I love you guys, and they will know what I mean.
Right, because Hulk learned to speak too.
Yeah.
And although that is a different thing, I understand. But
as
like
we
my
said,
point
he's
is,
been with us
this
the longest period of time, so
Yes,
he's had all
this
that time to
Groot
learn this.
was not raised on his original planet
exactly.
with those exact norms and
He's
linguistics
been
or
around
whatever.
English-speaking people. Well,
Yeah,
I guess what they're trying to say. I don't want to get too far into it, but I'm
Right.
assuming. I do remember that in the first couple of movies, it was just that Peter had a translator in his ear, and
Right.
that's how he knew what everyone was saying. But I guess he didn't understand Groot, but that's fine because I feel like other people don't understand Groot. This might just not have been in his translator,
except for Thor.
Yes, but that's what makes it fun. Is that
Yeah,
it's like this language that only
it was
certain
an
people learn.
elective.
Yes, it was an elective. But like,
Yeah,
whatever. Let's just assume they all speak English because they hang out with Peter. Like that's just
Yeah,
it
okay.
is. And maybe when they first met, they weren't all speaking English because that was part of the canon. That he's only
Right.
understanding them because he's got the translator in his ear.
right.
I thought he was
Which-
deaf, but it was like, no, that's a translator.
Yeah.
Let's just assume that off camera they were like, why don't we just all speak English? If that's
Mhm.
something we can do, we're just all going to speak English.
Mhm.
And
Which, by the
then-
way, I appreciate in Ant-Man 3 how they actually did do that with the society down there. They're like, oh, okay, we're going to install this
yeah,
thing
just take this
or
drink.
this
and
the,
then
the goop or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
we'll actually be able to understand each other.
you
I'm
can
like,
speak whatever language you want because we'll all understand it. Just drink this goop.
yeah, I'm like, that is great. I really appreciated that.
That's what I
Little
like about The
nugget.
Good Place as well. Speaking of that actor, just the fact that
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh no, I'm speaking French. You just hear it as English because it makes
Yeah.
things easier." I'm like, "Great! What a great way of having a bunch of people not speak different languages."
Mhm.
I'm just like, "Great! This is perfect world setting. Like they
Yeah.
all speak whatever they speak. It's just they understand it in their language."
Yeah. And I like the fact that it's just like through writing, it's like, because this is heaven, cool. And then through Ant-Man 3 is like, because
Drink.
this is
Drink.
aliens or because whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I can accept that a lot better. Just give me the respect as the audience to be like, not everyone, English wasn't colonized across the universe.
No.
So just
but
like,
in this,
give
they
me
speak
that.
English because of
Yeah.
who they're with.
Exactly.
And I feel like, yes, over 5 years of Groot being with them, sure, he would say, I love you guys, because he would understand that makes sense in this moment.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't like it at first, but then I was just like, whatever, like that, sure, that makes sense. I could buy that. Yeah, we haven't really talked about High Evolutionary, but I think that's because, as you pointed out, and I agreed with, he's got the one thing he's trying to do, and
he just evolves wildly fast. It's great.
He's not like a deep villain. I like that he says, like, I'm not trying to take over the world. Like, that's not what's happening here. I'm just trying to make things perfect. And it's like, obviously we hear it in the trailer already, but rockets, like, that's not what you're doing. But I think there was like this playing on the religious thing and like religious zealots, and just
I think there was definitely a lot of Hitler stuff.
Eugenics is a part of this as well, because at some point they're like, let's just get all the higher intelligence things, and then Rocket's like, geez, I don't actually want to be a part of that. Let's get everyone out of here. I like that they made, because I was like, even when they said it, I was like, that's a joke, right? Like, you're not really picking who lives and who dies.
Like that. But that part, I'm like, I'm glad Rocket did something about that, because that would have rubbed me so wrong.
Because then it would have been like the High Evolutionary, where
exactly
like,
pick and choose and
live. You can live. But yeah, I'm glad that all worked out eventually. But I guess that leads us to like this. Yeah, the trying to take all the living beings off of High Evolutionary. I don't know what I've been calling him this whole episode. If I've said 10 different things, sorry everyone to the listeners. I think it's High Evolutionary. The
High Evolutionary is.
He's got kids, he's got animals, all things that are going to be tested on, and they're trying to get them off. And kind of like in the first movie, Peter kind of just goes it without the mask. I guess that happens in the second movie too. He's constantly being frozen in space. I don't know why I thought this time it felt like, again,
I felt like they were going to do it.
Emotionally, I'll just let it happen. But I did feel like, oh, they're going to kill him. Okay, that's interesting, because I felt like he said he was the only actor that came forward saying, like, I'll keep doing these movies. I would love to keep doing it. And I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting if he said that, because he could show up different timelines or whatever. Like, wouldn't have to be a Star-Lord movie. But like, oh, they're gonna kill him, and then I like that it was part of Adam Warlock's arc, that he's like, no, he's a friend, or like, they gave me a second chance, I'll give him a second chance. Maybe if Adam knew that was like his fourth chance, he wouldn't have done it. But like, it still emotionally makes sense that Adam Warlock would be like, no, I'm gonna, even if it's like, I'm gonna give my friend Rocket, or whoever told him everyone deserves to say Groot, I'm gonna give my friend Groot, because you see the anguish in Groot's eyes when he can't reach Peter and he freezes, whatever. I'll give my friend Groot a second chance, and with his friend. That makes sense to me. But I did feel like, oh, why are we this late in the game teasing another death? Before it was fine. Before it was like, okay, like, they can get hurt, it's gonna be a thing. But like, I in the moment I was just like, nah, I mean, I hope they really follow through on this. But as I said at the beginning, ultimately, it didn't make it better or worse that no one died. I think it was the right message they were sending in terms of how things can end. And as I said, emotionally, I was fine that it worked in terms of Adam Warlock's humanity and opening up and embracing one of the themes of the movie, which is it's nice to have friends.
Yeah, it's and I love this small little thing, because a lot of people, this is, I think, a very interesting thing, is that because he's so young, he obviously hasn't developed that sense of empathy, a sense of power or skill or anything like that. He just like does whatever, he just has no consequences, right? So the idea of, he starts to develop that, and he starts to soften up when he picks up that pet and like won't let go of it, and he starts developing that empathy, being like, no, if I leave you with mother, you're gonna mother's gonna kill you, so I have to take you with me, and all this kind of stuff. And he developed that small little detail of, this is how you write a childlike character, to
Mhm.
actually bring him up, is you give him something to care about.
Yes.
And like that was so great, where people are like, oh, Adam Warlock was so this. I'm like, no, his character writing was amazing in this
I
movie.
loved when
And
when he killed the Ravager. And
yeah,
he's like, I told you show him we mean business. Like, well, what business are we going to show him? What do you
yeah.
mean?
He's like, are we
dead.
showing
This is
him
great.
files? Like, it was really good stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that this whole pet thing that he has going, it's great. It's great stuff. And then I don't care if it's not their version of Adam Warlock, because he can't write that anymore.
No.
Basically, Vision was Adam Warlock throughout that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean,
for all intents and
in terms
purposes.
of what gem he had and everything, or
Yeah.
stones,
and what he was doing and the godlike powers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, Vision was that stand-in. Too bad to those people, but this is what we got.
I mean, yeah, this is another thing where, like,
Yeah.
if I haven't seen the backlash yet. I guess the weekend's not over.
Mhm.
There will inevitably be backlash. It's an MCU movie. There's going to be, but
Yeah.
I feel like I just don't care about Adam Warlock at all. Like, there was no version of this that would make me be like, that sucked, because I'm just like, I have no connection to that character at all. It does not matter to me. So I was just like, okay, great, this guy.
Yeah.
It's Will Poulter. I like Will Poulter.
Yeah, I'm on board with this version of Adam Warlock than what has been what I understand Adam Warlock as in the comics, which is like a Jesus Christ like figure.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
seems too complicated
that
for me.
doesn't. And when in not only that, when I play him in Guardians of the Galaxy the game,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very, very good game with a very good storyline, Adam Warlock as a Christ-like figure there sucks. Just sucks. There's nothing fun about that, where it's like, hey, do you all remember Thor 1 and 2 and the parts of that suck? That's what you're asking for out of this character. So why do you want that? We like the part of Thor where he's humanized and growing up and doing those kind of things, and the idea of like, oh, he has musical taste this early into this interest. Like, this is actually, I'm on board with this. Like, I want to get to know this Adam Warlock, and I think for the people that are like, he should have a solo, he should have this. I'm like, for your version, but this is great. The fact that we're building a new team, that there's legitimate, like, hey,
I forgot
this
he's
is a
on the
legitimate team. Yeah, this is a
That's
legitimate
nice.
team.
Good for
There's
them.
powerhouses here, like, you know.
Yeah, I forgot he's on the team. Good. I like Cosmo. I think
Love Cosmo. The whole bad dog bit through the
so I
whole
like
thing was
everything
great.
about the Cosmo half of the bad dog, but I didn't truly understand what Kraglin's point was.
It's just being petty at that point, I think.
But he's such a he's a character I've really liked throughout the movies, and it was just like, do you really not have anything for him to do? He's gonna just hold on to this bad. Like, I thought it was like, at the end, by the time he's like, you are a good dog, I was like, was he trying to just egg her on so that she could be more powerful? Like, and like, it just felt like a weird, as you said, he's just being petty, but it just felt like a weird storyline for a character that usually they've been able to draw some genuine, like in the second movie, his crisis of like, I'm with
they killed my friends
100%, but like, you keep making these decisions that places Peter over us, and you're really pissing me off. And then the emotional payoff at the end when he's happy that people are respecting Yondu the way he always wanted them to respect him. And like, yeah, I just felt like, and then in this one, they're like, Kraglin, stay behind and be with the dog.
Watch,
I'm like, what?
Watch Nowhere.
This feels like a TV show then. Like, it's really, like it felt like, well, we'll tune in to Kraglin later in the episode. I'm like, all right.
Hey, I respect it. If he's on the team, there's roles to do, and they've got to delegate tasks, and he doesn't know how to use that.
It seemed weird, but
yet.
Again, it wasn't something that broke the movie for me. I was just like, oh, all right. And then he's doing this weird bit about you're a bad dog, and I don't really know why. I feel like it paid off. It didn't really pay off for me. I like Cosmo, and that you got a good sense of how she was like, please don't call me that. Like,
it's like, I know you don't mean it.
Me.
Yeah.
But then the fact that he kept going and shit, wait, so now do you do it? You mean it then? And this is hurting, and I don't like it. It just felt like weirdly cruel.
It definitely was super petty.
But I don't see him as being weirdly cruel.
But at the same time, I'm like, it's the circumstance in which case he was is the idea of like this dog made him look stupid while he was training and all that kind of stuff. Of course he would be petty. Like he's still very childish at the end of the day. I get that. And the idea of like, hey, this is getting you. You got me. I'm gonna like that childishness of like, I'm gonna hurt you because you hurt me.
Particularly childish. Like he has the wherewithal to be like, hey, Yondu, like I'm here to support you, but you're making terrible decisions. Like that doesn't seem like a childish character to me.
It doesn't seem like a childish thing, but it doesn't seem like someone that it won't be childish either, especially in a low stakes card game kind of situation where it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this. But the funny thing was like how everyone else was like at that poker game or whatever card game they were playing, just say she's a good dog. This is bugging all of us now. Yeah, that was really good. I
didn't really get it because it was like it's not like everyone's like ha ha ha. Everyone's like, this is annoying. Stop it.
Like I said, it's just petty. It's the idea of like, all right, you got in my head. I'm going to live for rent free in your head now too. It's just petty. That's all it is. It was just a funny little thing of like, to me, like an ongoing joke, like the whole "it's not ripe" bit in the second movie, but not nearly as good.
No, definitely not good.
The ripe bit was so much better.
Yeah,
it's not ripe.
Definitely better. Who else is in this movie? I don't know. Are we missing people to talk about?
I don't think we're really missing anyone to talk about. We've done a lot of good deep dives in these characters and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, the ending of this movie is the last thing I was expecting was a healthy goodbye and a healthy end to this. The last thing I was expecting, right? Because it's just like with the whole energy around some of the actors and, you know, like the whole, like I said earlier, the Gamora thing, Drax being very vocal about, I don't want to do this anymore. I feel like if we're betting on it, I'm like, oh yeah, you're probably going to bet on something at DC with James Gunn now. Like you two are buddies. Why not?
I think he just wants to actually act, which I respect, and not have, especially when you get, like, he's over 50, right? Like, and all these actors complain about that is the shape you need to be in to do these superhero roles. And I think he's like, I would rather just focus on acting. And so I don't think he's looking at DC like that. I'm sure he'll say that because he's going to support James Gunn no matter what. But I think he wants to be doing more stuff like Knock at the Cabin and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think that's where his
100% he wants to be doing that kind of stuff, which is again why he's like, I want to get out of this role, not because I'm having a bad time, but because
he was having a bad time with Disney.
Fair enough.
He don't like Disney. Yeah.
Right. Okay, but like in the sense where it's like, I want to breathe as an actor, and I'm like, I get that. I'm glad for you. You do your thing, but like I said, the idea of like everything here was a healthy goodbye. Yeah, and still the idea of like still being comic book, like everyone's still alive. We do have the potential to link up with these characters, especially with the post-credit scene.
Comic books, people don't really like. The stakes can't just be like they didn't die, so there was no stakes. It's like
the stakes were genocide for a freaking planet. Like, god damn it, that's high stakes.
Were very clear in this one. Like, we don't want Rocket to die, but it is like that's why I talk about like Captain America working so well for me in the MCU. Is like the stakes aren't is he gonna die? The stakes are is he gonna lose his humanity, or like they kind of hinted at in Age of Ultron, like when he doesn't have anything to fight for, what's going to happen to him? Like, because he seems to be so invested in the fight that what's going to happen after that? Like, how does he find peace? That's what's happening. And so I think that this franchise, I'm sure there's going to be another Guardians, maybe not with James Gunn, but like, I feel like that. So all I can say is this franchise is very clearly this, as you said up top, this personal thing for James Gunn as, you know, I think, I can't remember what he said in the first one was about, but obviously or I guess mothers, like it's Peter's getting right with his mother, like his feelings about his mother, then getting right about his dad and realizing it was Yondu who was the father, not real, well, not father. You know what I mean? Like he had a biological father, and then he had the person.
Then there's the person that raised him,
the person who raised him, and then this one is about getting right with yourself. That's what he said. And obviously, that's why it makes sense that you can't really get right with yourself if you're dead. Yes, you can accept certain things and that, but like, it's what I liked about even Peacemaker. Remember we talked about, like, oh, he already killed his dad. Like, what else is gonna? And it's like, no, like, what happens once you've decided what peace looks like? But like, how do you actually make that happen.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I like about not dying. It's like, yeah, well, you still have to live this life now. Like now, like what are you gonna do now? Like there's the obvious finality to dying, like where it's like, well, I guess now it doesn't matter, you're dead. It is there is like, okay, you guys made these connections, and like, is Mantis going to become a better person now that she's out on her own? Like we've seen what happens when she's not really checked. That's interesting to me that it wasn't like, oh, she got killed out. It's like, no, she thinks she can do this better on her, or at least needs to find out if she can do it better on her own.
Right.
That's still interesting.
Yeah.
You would still want to see how that looks. Nebula kind of backing off and being like, you know what, I've done the fighting. I can just like run a town or whatever. Like,
I want to run a commune. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's still interesting to see how that plays out for them. Like there isn't really, as you said, like it's a healthy goodbye. It doesn't mean it's like a happily ever after. It's just they said goodbye to this portion of their life, and I find that interesting.
And it's really, really great because that doesn't, you don't see that in real life, you know, like friends just kind of like drift out because it's like, oh yeah, I'm not part of the bar scene anymore. I'm not this kind of stuff. And it's just like, this is to see a group of people that have chosen to be together, actively having very real responses to it breaking up. Like the whole Drax being like, I want to come with you kind of deal. Like immediately being like, yeah, that's something very much a Drax would do. But the idea of the reminder is like, hey, I need to do this on my own. You're missing the point here, like kind of deal. This is for me. It's not about you and you needing something that you can find something that you're actually looking for here, and as opposed to here. The idea of all these characters running away or not being aware of what their actual root issues are and finally confronting that in this movie, it was such a good emotional payoff for everything. Because if Peter died, is that good story writing? Because you're right, it just means he succumbed to the whole inability to grow beyond this. Like the fact that he didn't die and was able to go, like,
he's just like mowing lawns like of his grandfather's friends. Like it is like, you gotta really, like, you gotta lock in. You can't just be like, okay, bye grandpa, I'm gonna go fly a spaceship or do that. Like it's like, no, like you gotta live your life with your family now. And like I like that that's a thing for him. Obviously they said the legendary Star-Lord will return. Like I saw that, but it was just like, it is interesting that he made a choice to, as we said already, like learn how to swim, like just connect truly with someone who loves you, and not have this goal you're going after of like, well, I could just make her love me, or I can save the day with this. It's like, no, just like take your time with a loved one and just be there with them. It's wildly different, right? It's a lot of for me, a lot of the kind of psychological themes I'm exploring in my everyday life now, and like therapy and all that kind of stuff, seeing on this, I'm like, man, this hits different. Seeing Peter's story roll out the way it does and having that connection with like him, Mantis, like I connected with every single one of these characters from an emotional standpoint. And this movie was just incredible for being able to do that. Even the Groot stuff, the idea that, hey, Groot is a 20-year-old, and like when James Gunn goes like, yeah, usually the stuff he says, I am Groot, is usually disgusting stuff or profanities, and the way he reacts, I'm like, yeah, that's a 20-year-old me. I'm like, I would say that just to get a shock factor value out of him. Like, this is really, really great. And the idea of like Peter actually choosing, like, I love what you said, choosing to be there and all this kind of stuff. He's now choosing to heal, and that work is so grounded. It's not off in the stars. It's not on a next adventure. That's the distraction. So I am really interested to see at what point do we revisit these characters and what they actually look like and all that kind of stuff, and how they've changed, and how they can either come back together, rally if needed, or just fly off into the sunset, like or the great forever sky, like Rocket says. It's a good movie. It is a good movie. Let's rate this movie now. I'm gonna give it a 9.
I'm right there with you. It's a 9.
I think
I'm glad you brought up the Mantis
stuff that bothered me, but emotionally, it still landed for me. I think that it's a really well done movie. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. I feel like we went a little long on this, but that's fine. I feel like it's a very good discussion about all the themes.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Mantis stuff, because I'm hoping on that journey she learned some accountability for that. That is just seeing it from this lens is not fun at all. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. We're part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Gay Movies. There's Contra Zoom Pod. We have Rachel on next week, so hopefully listen. And we just had our Bill episode. He's the host of Bad Gay Movies. He did Superman 3 with us. Rachel is going to do Batman Forever, so that's Batman 3 with us. And we also, there's other shows like Springfield Googleplex, so please go to thatshelf.com. You'll find those shows, our shows, more shows. And if you want to hear older episodes of Spoiled Rotten, please go to tdferything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter and Instagram are @tdfspoiled. So please go to all the things I just said and get in touch with us, as well as rate, review, subscribe, share, follow on all the different podcast platforms that you use. We would love the good word of mouth from you guys sharing. All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.